Well, on July 1st, the University of Minnesota's Duluth's College of Liberal Arts and School of Fine Arts officially merged. UMD officials say the merger will streamline students' ability to customize their degree paths while retaining all current major and minor programs. Officials say the 2020-2021 academic year will be a year under construction for the revamped college. So, joining us with more on the merger is Jeremy Youde, the Dean of the College of Liberal Arts. So, Dean, what was the driving force to precipitate the merger?
Well, yeah, I think there were a few things that were going into this. Part of it was just about creating additional efficiencies for students, making it easier for them to combine programs, to develop educational programs that work well for them, but also in terms of cutting some of our administrative costs so that we have budgetary savings that come out of this.
So if I'm a student deciding I might want to go to UMD, to one of these schools, what will that mean for a student?
In a lot of ways, it's not going to change the student experience. As you mentioned in your opening, all of the majors and minors that we had on, say, January 1st of this year are still going to be there when classes resume on August 31st this year. The way that classes are being taught is the same. The professors are going to be the same. So in a lot of ways, the sorts of experiences are going to be the same. What you will start to see are those opportunities to get those interdisciplinary opportunities, those ways to blend different disciplines together in ways that make sense for what you want to do with your education.
And there are a lot of majors and minors to choose from. The plate is full, isn't it?
Absolutely. 39 majors, 31 minors. We've got some certificate programs, and we also have this great interdisciplinary studies major where a student can work with faculty members in different departments and create their own major, something that works well for their interests.
With the pandemic hitting certainly the Twin Ports and the world this year, when students are looking at college now, are they going to physically be there, or will this be virtual learning?
So campus is reopening for students, and we're going to have a blend of different types of courses. So we'll have some face-to-face instruction, we'll have some classes that mix online and face-to-face instruction, and we'll also have courses that are entirely online. And then the idea is that all of our courses will go online at Thanksgiving. So for those last few weeks of the semester, everyone will be doing online education, but students will be able to come back to campus, living in the dorms, having that sort of
Sure.
collegiate experience.
You will be retaining the name UMD College of Liberal Arts. Do you see that changing someday, and why would it change?
It's very possible that will change. So that name we consider to be a placeholder for right now. And one of the things that we want to do over the course of this next year is to think about what is our identity as this new college. We've got now 10 different departments with these 39 different majors. So what's the name that makes the most sense for us so that students know when they're coming to UMD, this is the sort of educational experience I'm going to get.
Has this merger been something that's been in the works for a long while? And what was the school thinking when they decided to merge the two schools?
The merger was announced in late November, early December, and so we've had about now, 6-7 months to work on developing this whole process. And this next year is really going to be a process of us figuring out what we're going to do,
Sure.
what sorts of programs are we going to have.
Professor, one course offered will be interdisciplinary studies, and there'll be a major.
Yes.
What is that course?
It is a chance for students to really think about how we can bring different elements together, different disciplines. And that's one of the most exciting things about this new college is so oftentimes we hear about silos. We hear about walls that make it hard for students to bridge their different interests, to combine things. This is a chance to start to knock down some of those walls and think about how these different areas are related to one another.
The workplace is certainly changing. You and I know that's for sure. How will the combining of these two schools help somebody face the workplace as the workplace is today compared to maybe how it was 15, 20 years ago?
Well, I think it's going to do a few things. One, it's going to build a lot of resilience in our students. Our students have shown a remarkable adaptability as we've all tried to transition into this new environment where we're working and learning from home. But the other way that it's really going to have a benefit for our students is that one of our hallmarks is the experiential side of things. It's not just that you're sitting in a classroom and learning, it's also that you're applying things, you're doing things. And so when students are going out and they're applying for jobs, it's not just they have all this great knowledge in their head, but they also have projects. They also have experiences they can bring to an employer.
You talk about hallmarks. UMD has certainly educated thousands and thousands of students over the years. What's the draw?
I mean, just walking around Duluth is incredible. If almost every classroom on campus, you can look out and you can see Lake Superior right there. And I think that attracts the sort of student that wants to be engaged, that wants to have that sort of hands-on experience and wants to engage in the community. UMD is very much a university that sees itself as a community partner, as engaged with the larger community.
You mentioned at the top of the interview, Professor, that perhaps students won't notice much change at all. Will there be change for employees, for staff?
Yeah, there will be some changes to maybe some of the processes that people use for getting a reimbursement or doing these sorts of things. But again, these changes in a lot of ways are changes in how our organizational chart operates, as opposed to changes in the direct day-to-day experience that our employees are going to have, except for the fact that a lot of our employees might be working from home during this upcoming semester.
I went to college almost 60 years ago. Are students different today?
I went to college about 25 years ago or so, and in some respects, they completely are. They've had such radically different experiences and different sorts of upbringings. On the other hand, students are still coming to college because they have this passion for knowledge, because they see themselves as wanting to contribute to their societies, and I think the university still has an important role in helping students to achieve those goals. So in that way, they're still the same.
Has teaching changed over the decades?
You add technology. We've all been learning a lot with online education and the role of Zoom and all of these sorts of online opportunities, as we've had to transition our courses into an online space. So there's a change in some of the modes in how we teach, but that same sort of engagement, making sure that there's that back and forth between students and professors
Sure.
and among students, that still is a hallmark of what we do.
Jeremy, if I may, I'd like to go to another subject for just a few minutes. You're an expert in international health policy with emphasis in global pandemics. How is the U.S. government handling the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think?
Not very well. Compared to what we've seen in a lot of other countries, the United States is lagging far behind, and it's having a direct effect on some of these issues around, are our schools going to be able to reopen in the fall? Are parents going to be able to go back to work? And how can we plan for the reopening of our economy? So we're not a leader in this one.
Based on what you know about pandemics in the world, is this pandemic going to hang around for a while?
That's the $64,000 question in a lot of respects, because there's so much that we don't know, and so much that, we don't even know what we don't know in a lot of respects. But I would say that given what we've seen so far, it's unlikely that this is just going to disappear like we saw with SARS. It flared up and then it disappeared, and we haven't seen it since. That seems unlikely.
Is there any way the public can help end this?
I think one of the most important things that the public can do is wearing a mask. That's one of the most simple, basic things. I've got my mask in my pocket here, and I really applaud cities like Duluth for implementing mask ordinances. We've now seen Walmart, Target, CVS, a number of retailers requiring masks. It's something that I can do to protect myself and to protect the other people who are in the stores.
Why do you think there are so many people who are against being told they have to wear a mask?
I mean, masks are awkward. They're not something that a lot of us are used to having to wear. You have to remember to put it in the car before you leave. I've got multiple masks that I keep around the house just so that I don't get caught unaware. And so it's something that we have to build into our repertoire. And I think there's also an element where we feel like we've lost control over things because so much about this pandemic has thrown so much of our life into disarray. There's an element where in some instances, I think people want to express control. I'm not going to do this because this is my way of fighting back against the virus.
This certainly isn't the first pandemic or epidemic in the world.
No.
Do countries elsewhere seem to handle it better than we?
If you look specifically at this outbreak, there are a lot of countries that have done a much better job and have been able to, say, reopen their schools, have seen their death rates drop dramatically, far fewer people who are still in hospitals. So there's an issue both in terms of the healthcare capacity, how many resources do you have for healthcare, but also your political ability and willingness to implement the sorts of policies that would be necessary. And it's finding that match where you've got that combination, that's where you're more likely to be successful.
There is such a debate going on now whether schools should actually physically reopen and get students back in the classroom. What do you think about that?
I completely understand the debate. My oldest sister is a first grade teacher, and she and I were talking about this just the other day because her school district is having exactly exactly this sort of debate. From a social perspective, from a psychological perspective, it makes a lot of sense for schools for students to go back into schools. In terms of the learning outcomes that students have, it makes a whole lot of sense. It seems, based on what we know, that children are less susceptible to the virus, but this virus has surprised us before and will probably continue to surprise us again. So even if we do go back, we have to have that plan B ready, so that what if there is an outbreak.
So then what are some of the global impacts of the virus?
Well, I mean, look at the ability to, say, travel internationally. If you're an American, your passport is not going to get you into a lot of places unless you're able and willing to quarantine yourself for at least 2 weeks once you get into that other country. That has a big effect. We were placing an order for pianos for our piano lab at UMD earlier today, and right now that supply chain is interrupted. We can't get them for a while because the manufacturers aren't able to manufacture the pianos because the ability to get the raw materials into the factories is interrupted, plus the ability of workers to go to those factories are interrupted. So even on these sorts of day-to-day sorts of bases, you've probably even seen at the grocery store, the ability to get certain products is interrupted.
Yeah. The economy in this country has certainly been interrupted. We're not the first to be interrupted with a bad economy.
No, by no means. And this is something that we're seeing in a lot of different countries. And part of the question that comes up is what sorts of supplies do we have? What sorts of programs do we have in order to support people during these times when we have record high unemployment rates, when we have people who are very uncertain about whether or not they're going to be able to pay their mortgage or pay their rent? What sorts of programs do we have to make sure that, say, they still are able to have health insurance if they lose their job related to the pandemic?
We have heard, not often, but we have heard of some animals coming down with this. Is that widespread?
It is. Probably not the most important factor for why we've seen the big number of cases here in the United States. As you said, there have been some cases, but it seems to be very spotty, and there's not a great understanding of why. We do know that this appears to have come from an animal and that it made the leap into humans, but then it seems to be human-to-human transmission that is keeping this pandemic going.
Well, Jeremy, I've enjoyed our discussion on both subjects, UMD and the pandemic. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Jeremy Youde, UMD.